The 7 Years' War and the Great Awakening, historical stepping stones to the American Revolution. A harsh beginning, the 7 Years' War. In 1754, deep within the dense forests of western Pennsylvania, a young British officer named George Washington led colonial troops in an attack on French forts. The primary motivation for this action was the ambition to control the resource-rich Ohio Valley, a region claimed by both Britain and France. Under pressure from British authorities and driven by his personal desire to build a reputation, Washington advanced, not only to safeguard the empire's interests but also to assert his position on the political and military stage. This marked the beginning of a prolonged and brutal conflict known in America as the French and Indian War, and globally as the 7 Years' War. This war was not merely a regional skirmish but part of a global struggle between Britain and France. For instance, concurrent battles in India shaped the subcontinent's future, solidifying British control through the East India Company. Such events underscored the global impact of the 7 Years' War. Britain's primary objective was to seize fertile colonial territories, especially along the Ohio Valley. For France, the war was an opportunity to strengthen its foothold in North America through alliances with indigenous peoples. Although the French initially gained the upper hand, supported by Native American tribes, Britain ultimately turned the tide. The year 1759 was a turning point when British forces secured a decisive victory at Quebec in the famous Battle of the Plains of Abraham. This triumph not only solidified British dominance in North America but also led to France ceding Canada and other territories in the Treaty of Paris in 1763. However, the cost was immense. Britain's national debt skyrocketed, laying the groundwork for controversial taxation policies in the future. Consequences of the war, transfers and conflicts. Despite their victory, the British did not enjoy peace. The war drained the national treasury, forcing the British government to impose heavy taxes on the American colonies to offset costs. This sparked simmering tensions between Britain and its colonies. Moreover, indigenous peoples, former allies of the French, suffered the most significant losses. The Shawnee tribe, for example, had supported the French in numerous battles but were later driven from their ancestral lands in the Ohio Valley. The story of Tecumseh, a Shawnee chief, illustrates this tragedy. Witnessing his family's displacement and the seizure of tribal lands motivated him to become a prominent leader in later indigenous resistance movements. The losses extended beyond territory to culture and tradition, leaving deep scars in indigenous communities. British territorial expansion pushed indigenous peoples from their traditional lands, igniting new conflicts, most notably Pontiac's Rebellion in 1763. To ease tensions, Britain issued the Proclamation Line of 1763, barring settlers from advancing west of the Appalachian Mountains. However, this decision only fueled dissatisfaction among colonists, who believed they were entitled to the lands they had fought for. The Great Awakening, a new breath for revolutionary spirit and its connection to the American Revolution. While political and economic conflicts escalated, a quieter revolution was underway, the Great Awakening. Beginning in the early 18th century, this movement sparked a powerful religious revival throughout the American colonies. Leaders like George Whitefield and Jonathan Edwards held vibrant revivals, drawing thousands. Their messages emphasized personal freedom in seeking salvation, breaking away from traditional religious structures that prioritized church intermediaries. This not only reshaped religious landscapes but also planted seeds for ideas of freedom and equality. An important outcome of the Great Awakening was the rise of new denominations like Baptists and Methodists, challenging the dominance of traditional churches. This critique of religious authority inspired colonists to question distant forms of governance, including British Parliament, intellectual resonance, republicanism and liberty. By the late 18th century, new political ideologies spread throughout the American colonies. Republicanism and liberty, influenced by philosophers such as John Locke and Montesquieu, provided a robust theoretical framework for the independence struggle. Republicanism, with its ideal of government without monarchy, encouraged the spirit of sacrificing personal interests for the common good. Meanwhile, liberty focused on protecting natural rights, such as life, liberty, and property. These ideologies gradually replaced traditional views of political power, sparking vigorous debates about the colony's future. The role of women and marginalized groups. Another significant yet often overlooked aspect of this period was the role of women and marginalized groups in shaping revolutionary ideas. Women, such as Abigail Adams, were vocal in advocating for greater political and social equality, often writing letters and essays that challenged the status quo. Enslaved individuals and free African Americans also began to adopt the language of liberty and equality, framing their own struggles within the broader revolutionary discourse. For instance, the writings and petitions of figures like Phyllis Wheatley highlighted the contradictions of a society fighting for freedom while maintaining slavery, economic consequences, and colonial resistance. The financial burden of the 7 Years' War led Britain to implement controversial measures, such as the Sugar Act, 1764, and the Stamp Act, 1765. These taxes were designed to recover war debts but were met with fierce resistance in the colonies. The phrase "no taxation without representation" became a rallying cry, uniting colonists in opposition to British policies. Events like the Boston Tea Party, 1773, showcased escalating tensions, as colonists protested against the Tea Act and broader economic exploitation. Colonial resistance also took the form of intellectual debate and organization. Pamphlets like Thomas Paine's Common Sense articulated arguments for independence, while groups like the Sons of Liberty coordinated protests and boycotts. These efforts demonstrated a growing unity among the colonies, setting the stage for revolution, cultural shifts, and the revolutionary spirit. The Great Awakening not only influenced religious practices but also had broader cultural impacts. Sermons and revivals emphasized themes of equality and moral accountability, resonating with colonists across social classes. This shared spiritual experience fostered a sense of community and collective purpose, which translated into political action. Additionally, the arts and literature of the period began to reflect revolutionary ideals. Poets like Phyllis Wheatley and essayists like John Dickinson used their works to challenge authority and inspire change. This cultural awakening complemented the political and economic struggles, creating a multifaceted foundation for the American Revolution. Connecting the two events, the 7 Years' War and the Great Awakening, though different in nature, played pivotal roles in laying the groundwork for the American Revolution. The war incited widespread dissatisfaction with British rule, while the Great Awakening introduced innovative ideas about freedom and self-governance, forming a solid ideological foundation for revolution. On one hand, the war fostered deep resentment against British authority, stimulating desires for self-rule. On the other hand, the Great Awakening ignited a spirit of critique and self-awareness among the colonies, emboldening them to challenge external powers. In retrospect, the convergence of political, economic, and spiritual factors created a perfect storm, transforming the American colonies from a state of subjugation into a beacon of freedom and independence. The stories from this era serve not only as historical lessons but also as enduring inspirations of resilience and the power to change the world.